So finally, let's conclude by saying what might the strategies be for dealing with non-unit root versus unit root data and reconciling the tests with the economics. One is to know that unit root tests generally have poor power. That means that they tend, especially in the case of the ADF, they tend to find more unit roots than possibly actually exist in the data. They don't like coping with structural breaks. They tend to get confused, and they don't like coping with many other aspects of the real life data. Their unit roots tests have very good properties under perfect conditions, but we very rarely can counter those perfect conditions in our real data. Two, you have to make that trade-off appropriate to your problem between the economics and the empirics. And sometimes you're going to decide, okay, we're really going to let the economics dominate because it makes sense, and I would claim that in the Q ratio case it probably makes sense to think of that as a I know what fit series. And sometimes we're going to let the empirics dominate. Sometimes they'll agree, and that's great, that's fantastic, but when we have these cases that don't agree, then we've got a problem. And a really good example of the type of series where we actually see the differences in the literature are interest rates and inflation rates. In some applications, you will see interest rates, which typically have a rho of approximately 0.98, treated as unit root. And the people search for co-integration amongst them. So you might think about something like long-run co-integration between world interest rates. And sometimes people will say, no, it's just a very persistent series, but it's definitely not unit root. It's an I0 series, and we want to treat it as though it's got a stable mean. And this would be particularly the example when you were looking at policy. So if you were looking at short-term interest rates, it doesn't make much sense to think about them being I1, because otherwise the central bank really can't control what's going on. So the bottom line here is that the first thing you must do when you run some sort of unit root test is go back and do what we've just done and check the value of rho. So don't just read off the ADF test statistic, work back and make sure that that actually really does imply that rho is suitably close to 1 for your purposes of the problem. I hope that's helped explain what's going on, and please send me any comments if you've got queries.